Well, all right. What's happening? I get to see myself in almost max headroom style sort of pixelation. Just getting all set up here with the microphone. I'm gonna rock the mic tonight. How is everybody? God, this is a terrible. Feels like I'm on like Earthlink or something. We got 4 people showing up. Hi, Gene. Nice to see you. Let me give a shout out. Hello, everyone. There we go. There's Sally. Hi, Sally. Hello, Marlene from Western Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show. I'm looking a little red tonight. I think I need to step up the lighting a little bit. And I also can't watch myself on the YouTube screen. So if I just watch myself on OBS, it looks and feels a lot more like good video. I don't know why I don't have a great connection, because I pay like $80 a month for this thing. So how is everybody? We're going to be getting into some astrology tonight. And hi, Madeline. So we're going to get into some astrology tonight, and probably going to record live for about maybe an hour, 15, 20 minutes tonight. So I just wanted to take the temperature from people in the chat room. And if you listen to this after the chat, then maybe you can give me some input on your end. I'm thinking about changing the time for the show. And I'm thinking about doing it at 8 p.m. on Sunday. Although Sunday's not my favorite day, it just seems to work out that it's probably the best. If you have any other ideas about not during the daytime but nighttime doing this live stream, I'm just getting ready to stop doing it at 10 o'clock at night because I think it's a bit late for a lot of folks. So 8 p.m. is probably going to be the new start time on Sunday, unless I get a great idea from somebody else. In which case, I'll think there's Mojo. Hi, Joe. Nice to see you. Some good friends showing up tonight. How is everybody? We're coming up on that big supermoon. We're going to talk about that tonight. The full moon. It's a super blue blood moon. The super blue blood moon. And I've done for it. So it's going to be waxing. Waxing in the wee hours of the morning. So anytime after midnight, before dawn, 6 p.m. my time, okay with me. Okay, that's here in the West Coast. Good. So 8 o'clock works for Madeline. So this full moon is going to be waxing, and you'll be able to see it. The full moon will go exact at, I believe it's around 6:05 or 7:05. I have to pull out the chart. Let me just look at it. Let's do that right now as we speak. All right, so here we go. Let's see what we got in terms of we got the chart of the moment. That was last week. Let's see. Today. Okay. So that's from today. And this is from today. I guess we're going to get them both. And one more. Let's do one more for today. That's this one right here. The old full moon. There we go. And okay, I think that's about it. We can look on to the chart of the moment on the Astro Deans, which I recommend that you plug in, because some of the charts tonight we'll be using off of Astro Deans, since I still have not figured out how to actually post graphics now on the new YouTube, which I'm not crazy about, but we'll just have to do this for now. I've got a I've got to call into somebody who hopefully should be able to help me figure this out. So let's bring up the chart of the moment. And we're going to talk about the super blue blood moon. And we're also going to talk about prenatal eclipse in the chart tonight. Prenatal eclipse. You ask yourself, well, what is a prenatal eclipse? Well, it shows where the last solar and lunar eclipse was in your chart before you were born. And they're pretty interesting, I have to say. I've been delving into my own prenatal and prenatal solar eclipse and prenatal lunar eclipse. And it's a pretty interesting phenomena in a lot of ways. You get some real insight. And as we get into that a little bit later on, I'll share my chart with you, and I'll give you an example of what they look like and the definition and how it may be important for you to figure that out and try to understand it and wrap your head around it. All right, why don't we go into the charts? And this is what I have here right now. This is going to be based on my position of the world. And if you go to Astrodienst and you pull up the chart of the moment, you will see your position in the world. And because I'm using my birth chart, which is from France, it's going to give me what's happening in France part of the moment. So I suppose I could change it to Austin, and maybe I will. Let's do this. Let's modify the reference place here. See if we can do that. Modify reference place, and I'll just make it in Austin so that since most of us are in the continental United States, we'll be able to at least rally around some degree of association here. So I'm going to do the chart of the moment right now for Austin, Texas. Hold on. There we go. Okay, Austin, Texas. Let me pull this back. By the way, I got to say, okay, so Joe in the chat room, I gotta give a shout out to Joe's son, Ryan, who has been accepted to MIT. How about that? Her son has been accepted to MIT. And if you knew Ryan and his story, it would be even more meaningful if you understood Ryan's challenge in this world. So a big salute to Ryan. Good job, Joe. MIT is nothing to sneeze at. That's awesome. Okay, so here we go. We're looking at, again, the chart of the moment. You can go to astro.com. If you haven't plugged in your chart there, it's free. I suggest you do it because, well, it's free. It's a good site. It's an absolutely good site. Lots of information, lots of tools, lots of toys. They also offer really stellar reports. Liz Green, Robert Hand, these are some of the real giants of astrology, have been running the site since the 90s and have been putting their life work in it. There's a lot of free articles there. So it's a really good resource. Anyway, you can pull up your chart or just go there. Just go there. I'm not sure if they make you sign in and do a chart, but if you do the chart of the moment, you're not signed in. I think it probably comes like Greenwich Mean Time from wherever they are, which I think is Germany. So you may want to localize it. Right now, what I have is I've got Libra rising at 4 degrees. Remember last week we did this. It was right around the same time. We went from the early degrees of Libra. So we know that Libra is on the ascendant at roughly 10 o'clock Central Standard Time on Sundays. But it's really cool if you stare at the chart of the moment enough, the chart will actually move. You'll see degrees move, like the rising sign will move. By the time the show is over, we'll probably have gone through about 3 degrees of the rising sign. So tonight the sun is in the 5th house conjunct Venus in Aquarius. So now Venus is rising before the sun, it looks like. And that means we still have the morning star, although We may not see it in this part of the world. We usually see it during the summertime, the dog days of summer, when the sun is occluded by Sirius, right? Yes, Sirius. No, it's the Pleiades. No, it's the Pleiades. It's Sirius. It's Sirius that occludes the sun. That's right. Anyway, we also have right now, right at the midheaven, we have Moon in Cancer. So the midheaven is at 4 degrees in the chart. The Moon is in Cancer. So tomorrow when you wake up, the Moon will be in Cancer. But by the time we come to that full moon on the 31st, it will be in Leo, and we're going to have a lunar eclipse. That's right. We're going to have a lunar eclipse, a blood moon, and we're going to have a blue moon. How about that? So the blue moon is when we have 2 full moons in 1 month. Okay. The blood moon happens when the moon is being dusted up at a certain point in time, and that dust is in the upper atmosphere. So we're going to have this red moon, this new moon, this blue moon. It will not be blue; it will be red, and will also happen to be a lunar eclipse. And like I said, if you're in the southern part of the country, the eastern part of the country, the southeastern part of the country, and even to some degree, sort of where we are here in Texas, you'll probably be able to see it more easily than in other parts of the country. So it is our first eclipse of the year, and it will be in the sign of Leo, and it is exact, if I'm not mistaken. Let me get out the eclipse chart here, because I put that together tonight. Where are we? Here it is, right here. So the full moon will, nothing like having a slow computer. The moon will be full at 11 degrees Leo at 7:25 a.m. And that'll be on the 31st. So remember, it turns the 31st at midnight. So that full moon lunar eclipse, the blue moon and the blood moon. It's a lot, man. It's a lot to say. That's all going to be happening. But like I said, it will be in exact opposition at 7:25 a.m. at 11 degrees Leo, at 11 degrees Aquarius, the sun on the other side. So we have 11:11, and we have 22. The descendant will be at 22, and the ascendant will also be at 22. So we have 22, 22, 44, 44. So it should be an interesting eclipse. Now, remember, the last solar eclipse that we had was the big one on the 21st. On the 21st of, it was the 20, I'm sorry, I apologize. It was the 20, yeah, it was the 21st. It was the 21st of August. I was thinking 21st. It's the 21st of August. We had that big lunar, the granddaddy, the big one. And I know some people who've been affected by that eclipse. Now, I have a friend, actually she's a client, and this is one of those things with astrology that's really interesting, because she has Pluto on her ascendant at the same degree as the eclipse, 28 degrees. And she has, her ascendant obviously is at 28 degrees. So this eclipse happened right on her ascendant and right on her Pluto. And to this person. Now, this is the case at times with eclipses. So, I mean, some people will be affected by them more than others. So I tried to understand, well, why did this eclipse not affect this person? And so to give you a little bit of background of this person, she's somebody who's been involved in recovering her life. And when I mean recovering her life, I'm not talking about stolen credit cards, okay? I'm talking about recovery from substance abuse, very heavy stuff, being on the streets, and not a young person. We're talking somebody who came from money, influence, power, and somewhere along the way got knocked off her path in a big way. So she had to go through a hell of a lot to get back on her feet, which is part and parcel of Pluto on the ascendant, right? It's intense. It's transformational. Dealing with the identity, Leo, ego, all that stuff. So I just wondered if she had gone through so much depth and intensity and change that when the eclipse came and actually hit her Pluto, that it was almost as if her Pluto was null. Like maybe it was an anti-Pluto or something like that. So it was just a thought that I had, because as an astrologer, when I saw that, I asked her, I said, so did anything happen to you like in, around, on, after the eclipse? And she said, no, my life was just fine. So I'm going to throw this out there, that because she had gone through so much Plutonian intensity in her life, that the gods, as they were, or God, said, look, hey, you've been through a lot. You're gonna sit this one out, okay? This eclipse, you're gonna sit this one out. We're not going to rearrange the chess pieces of your life. Now I have another friend who has the sun at 28 Leo, which is where the eclipse was. So she had the eclipse right on her sun, and she threw herself into it. She just, it's like, I don't care. I want to throw myself. If it's going to be intense, I'm going to be intense with it. Well, she's had a very intense time after the eclipse, I have to say. She had a major, almost a breakup with her boyfriend, her guy, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person, and a good guy. And these are two people at kind of this stage of their life, that they're late boomers, and do they really need to be breaking up with each other, right? I mean, this is a time of stability, at least for some folks. So that was kind of a big piece that they had to navigate. But not only that, but she's been having friends die, and that's the other thing. So she's dealing with the second friend in about 35 days who's dying, and down in Los Angeles, sitting with this woman. So again, I mean, here's a person that after this eclipse happened, just it doesn't happen. It just does not happen that way. It's like sometimes these events take a little bit of time, maybe not a year later, but certainly a few months out, we can still be, I think, feeling the effects of the eclipse. Now, I have the eclipse period basically being about 10 days before and about 10 days after. That's where the intensity will sort of rise, and that's where the intensity will fall off a little bit, 10 days before and 10 days after. But I'll go on record that eclipse, so we'll go from eclipse cycle to eclipse cycle. So now this eclipse will be at 11 degrees, so it won't be on her sun, 11 degrees Leo, but later in the day, it will be on her sun at about, 22, so we're talking sometime early evening, later that night. And that would not necessarily constitute the completion of an eclipse cycle. The next completion cycle for her and for everybody, by the way, will be that eclipse on the 15th. And that's going to be the 15th of February. And that is a solar eclipse. And that's at, I believe, if I'm not around 24 Aquarius, which is, I think, what we figured out last week. So that would be sort of the summation of the eclipse cycle. The full lunar eclipse sign that the last solar eclipse was in, and then the next solar eclipse. So from that eclipse to the next eclipse, that's 6 months. That's a 6-month cycle. So I would think that now there are 14-year cycles as well with eclipse cycles. So the next solar eclipse would be 14 years later, right? In that same sign, same degree, 14 years later. So, but this one completes the eclipse cycle from the last eclipse to the next solar eclipse and the first lunar eclipse. Actually, I believe it's the second lunar eclipse after that. So this solar eclipse will will finish the cycle and hopefully take her off of her suffering a little bit. So what does the eclipse mean? We'll get back into the chart in a moment. We'll go through the various planets that were there. But what does the eclipse mean? There are some people who place absolutely zero influence on an eclipse. There are other people who, and I'm talking astrologically, I'm not just talking about, look at that. So the ascendant's gone from 4 to 7. We're already at 7 now. And I'm not just talking about people who are scientific or atheistic or realistic or pragmatic. I'm talking about people in the astrological community. So, by the way, Zaki Starman, who's another astrologer, his sister passed away. I know he doesn't listen to me, but it's okay. Wish you all the best. Anytime we lose somebody, it's a major event in our lives. So hang in there. Anyway, the eclipse cycle. I was thinking about other astrologers. That's why it came up. So there are astrologers, believe it or not, who place very little emphasis on eclipse. They'll see it as a lunation phase, but what they won't do is they won't go into the supernatural definition, or they won't go into the definition of the eclipse, which is foreboding or superstitious. Okay, so that's one end of the spectrum. And then there's another end of the spectrum where people are looking at eclipses as these augurs of things that are coming. And usually they're not good things, right? The eclipse is a portent of something that can be perceived as negative. Has anybody seen Apocalypto with Mel Gibson? Well, actually, Mel Gibson's not in it, but Mel Gibson directed it. Apocalypto is one of my favorite movies of all time because it's a guy film, right? But it's also a love story too. It's a very intense and very powerful love story, and it's about the decline of the Mayan civilization. Without giving too much of the movie away, and I highly recommend watching it. It is really a fantastic movie, and speaks to our time in a lot of ways. Anyway, so what happens in Apocalypto is that one of these people who are taken from their tribe forcibly by a rather bloodthirsty group of Mayan. It's going from village to village and plundering and looting and taking people back to, for all intents and purposes, it looks like it could be Chichen Itza or one of the Mayan centers. And there's a young man that they take who becomes part of a prophecy. And the prophecy is when the sun, when the day turns to night, is when the day turns to night, and it falls across the sun. So there's an eclipse. There's an eclipse in the movie, and it plays a pretty large role in the telling of the tale. So on the one hand, and this is where I think we should like check in on the eclipse. On the one hand, that eclipse was a portent, and that portent saved his life. It saved his life, and it actually stopped a very bloodthirsty, ritualistic scene that was taking place. So it shut it down. Now, it didn't save other people's lives, but it saved his life. So that eclipse happening at that moment was actually providential. Liberating himself from a very winds up becoming a key figure in what happens next in the history of the Maya. Now, of course, Mel Gibson is taking some license with history and kind of speeding things up and events up. So it's not a historically correct film. However, that said, there is a point that is being made, and it is the eclipse that is the moment in time where the Mayan Empire is going from one phase to another phase. And that one phase is its height, its glory, even though it's drenched in decadence and the dark magic of blood rituals. It is also going to be moved into this new phase where, even though it's at its decadent height, it is going to quickly enter its downfall, demise, and the disappearance of the Mayan people. And it's a very interesting movie. So the eclipse plays a large role in the film because it augurs a shift, a change, a difference, and a transformation of one culture to another culture. And it's I guess you could actually say that the eclipse was putting the Mayans out of their misery, based on the movie. So this is, again, a cinematic portrayal of an eclipse. And we've all been through a lot of eclipses. So I want to kind of demystify the eclipse tonight, but at the same time, I want to get into what is the potential meaning. So we've all been through a lot of eclipses. There have been many eclipses since we've been on this mortal coil, right? And we're here, we're talking, we're breathing, and for the most part, I think we've all survived our eclipses. Now, I have seen things happen on eclipses and around eclipses, especially when they're right on the sun. Like, if they're exact, if an eclipse is exact, I think things can change in a person. And I saw this with my own son, who had the sun eclipse his sun at on March 8th. It was a couple of years ago when we were going through that Pisces Virgo eclipse. And that was pretty intense. I did see a visible change in him. It was very strange. It was like he was super gung-ho and about baseball, and he had a lot of energy and a lot of spirit. And then like right after that eclipse, I remember seeing him. I mean, it was really not long after. I remember seeing him at he was in a game, and he was at the edge of the dugout, and the rest of the team was on the other side of the dugout near home plate, and they're all like, cheering their guys on. He had almost had one foot out of the dugout. It was very odd. And I was looking at him, and I said, this eclipse just happened. And, I wonder if there's some kind of subtle change going on in his personality. Did the eclipse play a role in it? ? Well, I mean, that was then. And, of course, he's still around and doing his thing. And I would say the long-term effect of that eclipse, maybe. There might have been a long-term effect. And because I haven't seen the same kind of, like, in some ways, player, not even player, but it was more like an energy on the field that I saw pre-eclipse. So that's an interesting moment in time that I noticed with somebody that I know was close to me. I mean, that's where you can really get into and understand astrology more. And it's by connecting with people that looking at their chart, looking at what's going on with them, looking at aspects and transits. That's the best place to start. A lot of people are very interested. I've noticed this. There's a huge uptick in astrology. Huge uptick. People want to study it. They want to learn it. They want to find out more about it. This is a really interesting time for astrology and for people to be involved in it and to look at it and to even contemplate being an astrologer, amateur astrologer, professional astrologer. It's a very interesting time for it. I've been having students lately. I hadn't had any students for about a year and a half. Now all of a sudden I got a bunch of people who want to study with me. So this is a fascinating time for astrology. What was I going to say? There was something somewhat significant that was connected to astrology. It'll come back to me. What is it? It'll come back to me. So, but yeah, this is a way. Oh, yes. Okay. I remember. Okay. So one of the things, I have a new student. She's great. And one of the things that we talked about, when I have a student, I try to give them some historical and philosophical reference material for astrology. Like, where did it come from? The Western Placidus mundane system in the West, so on and so on and so on. And as a result of that, one of the first conversations we have is I talk about Ptolemy, Claudius Ptolemy, who is the father of Western astrology. Very interesting guy. He lived in Alexandria, and I think he lived about 70. His big work is called the Almagest, which is about astronomy. And he talks about astronomy in much the same way that we talk about astrology, that he attributes energies and characteristics to planets. And then his astrological work called the Tetrabiblios, and he gets more into astrology. But one of the things that Ptolemy said about astrology, which I think is really interesting, and it's also something that people need to remember, and it's to really kind of understand, is that he was convinced that there was merit to astrology. And this was not a guy who was some hocus pocus wizard. He was really trying to figure things out scientifically and mathematically. So he was convinced there was merit to astrology. And yet, and this is the interesting thing, and yet he did not place it above anything else. That there were other things that a person would go through in their life, like family they were born into, although I think astrology can speak to that, their culture, their cultural influences, their genetics. I mean, so he was taking in this kind of big picture about the individual, and that astrology would offer up a slice that would describe an individual. But his philosophy was that it did not encompass the entire individual, which I think is actually kind of healthy, because a lot of times we want to explain everything away astrologically. And sometimes, like my friend who had the eclipse, my client who had the eclipse on her Pluto, on her ascendant, nothing happened. My best guess is that she's been through so much Pluto that when the eclipse did happen, it probably didn't have any, there was no lesson there, or there was no energy. I mean, what was she going to do? Like, wind up going back on the streets again and having to resurrect? No, she was too far down the line with that. So I think that that's a really interesting and salient kind of point that Ptolemy has. And I think it's something to just kind of keep in the back pocket. It doesn't delegitimize astrology, but there are times when you don't always have to go to the chart. You can go to the heart. You can go to the heart. You can go inside your heart. You can get inside your own being, your spirits, and connect in with God and love and this grand and magical, powerful force that connects us all and is responsible for pretty much everything, right? I mean, that's a pretty big influence. And sometimes you just get off the chart and you want to get into that. And how you get into it, that's up to you. It can be meditation, it could be art, it could be recreation, whatever. So again, this is not a diminution of astrology at all. And really what it is using the chart like a supplement, like something that you can tap into and you can learn from and go through and understand. And it's clearly there are deep lessons inside astrology. Don't get me wrong. Just don't get caught up in the fatalistic, or, there was a time when I really was into tarot. Man, was I into tarot. I was doing readings all the time. Not for other people and myself. I was looking at all kinds, and it was like my life got really caught up in the gears of tarot, and I had to just really step back from it and not engage with it for quite a while. And I still do some readings every now and then for people, but it's the same thing for astrology. Sometimes you have to let your life breathe a little bit. You can't allow, it's like there's a process involved, and sometimes you can't rush the process. It's kind of like if you have a conflict with somebody and you have a falling out, there has to be a phase of healing. There has to be a phase of real organic forgiveness. And you can't rush that. You can't push that. If you lose somebody, there's a time for grieving, and you have to be able to let that person go through whatever it is you need to go through, and you can't rush that either. So there are just processes in our life, and no matter how much you look at your chart, and no matter how many, I remember one time, we're getting off the subject a little bit, but I was actually here in Austin, of all places. I was here in 1996, and I was reading tarot cards here. I was traveling across the country, and I remember sitting down with this kid, and he was seemed like a decent young guy, maybe a little troubled, which is probably why he was sitting down with me, hanging out, wanting to get a tarot reading. So I did a tarot reading for him. And they weren't the best cards. They kind of matched, I think, the mood and what was going on in his life. And I tried to give him a real holistic reading, and he paid me for it. And he came back the next day. This was at a coffee place here in Austin. He came back the next day, and he wanted another reading, which I wasn't really keen on doing because he just got one. And he was like, really pushing it. And I said, okay, well, let's do it. Let's check it out. And we'll see what comes up, just to see what comes up. And I swear I think it was like 80% of the same cards popped up. I was freaky. It was like, you can't push the river. You cannot push the river. You just sometimes, we're just in certain phases in our life. And with astrology, people get into these transits that are very long, and they change the course and alter the course of one's life. I'm going through one right now. I have transiting Neptune, which is conjuncting my south node, which is also going to have a role to play in my pre-lunar eclipse story. Anyway, so there are changes taking place in my life. There are changes taking place in my home. There are changes taking place in relations with my home. And it's very Neptunian. It's very, very Neptunian. So part of me is like looking at this Neptune thing, like, when is this shit going to end? And it's not for a couple of years. I mean, Neptune will not get off my south node officially until December of 2019. Is it December of 2019? Not even 2018, 2019. And it showed up in May. So we're not that far away from May. We're in February now. So, February, so March, April, May, 3 months from now, it'll be 1 year. And it won't move off finally until December of 2019. It's a long transit. This is what happens with the outer planets. And when we get into these outer planet transits, if they're conjunct a planet in our chart, it can be a very difficult situation. And sometimes it's good to take time off a little bit from astrology and let your life breathe a little bit. Not obsess over the fact that you have Pluto on one of your planets, although unmistakably it can be very, very challenging. Don't get me wrong. How do you deal with a transit on the outer planet? Well, it depends on the outer planet. With Pluto, if you've got a Pluto transit on one of your planets, I've told this to people who have a Pluto transit, you can't negotiate with Pluto. It's like when Pluto comes to town, you have to basically go through whatever the Plutonian lesson is. That's the story around Pluto. If you're going through Uranian transits are interesting. Plutonian transits, look, whatever Pluto's crossing in your chart, whatever it's conjuncting, if you go through it, and get through it, you'll be completely transformed. You'll have dropped any and all pretenses about whatever planet it's been in conjunction with. You'll have had to surrender and give up certain things, and yet it will forge you. Pluto, the Plutonian experience will forge you. It is deeply, deeply, deeply alchemical, deeply transformational. And whatever is left over after Pluto transit are the building blocks for whatever it is you start over with a Pluto transit. It's very intense. It's very, very intense. And I'll tell you what happens when Pluto crosses a planet, whatever that planet is, whatever relationship it has to death, you get to go through it. And then you get to face your fears around death and mortality and the body, because that's what Pluto brings. So just remember that if you have a Pluto transit, the ultimate end game with Pluto is deep and profound transformation, where you become, I wouldn't say a master of death, but you look at death in a very, very different light with a Pluto transit. Uranus transits they're shocking, and they happen, and then they happen, and they happen. The Uranus transits you can get. Like if you get hit by a Uranus transit, like Uranus on your ascendant or Uranus on your sun or even on Venus, you'll learn a lesson, and things will happen quickly. Uranus-Venus transits, relations break up quickly. Boom. And you could start another relationship quickly too under Uranus-Venus transit, but it may not last, okay? It may not last. So, but it's an interesting transit, and there's some creativity that you can play with because you can try out new things with Uranus. Well, that didn't work. Let me try this. Well, that didn't work. Let me try this. So you can continue to try new things, and maybe one of those things will work. I mean, you have fun with it, right? Why not? Neptune transits will creep up on you. They'll creep up on you. It's kind of like low tide, low tide, low tide. Woo, high tide. You ever had those moments? You're walking along a beach, just walking. All of a sudden, wham! You get hit by a big wave you didn't see coming. That is a Neptune transit. Sometimes it can be Uranian, but it's a Neptune transit because everything's good. All of a sudden, you get hit with a big wave. And the whole idea is to not get taken out and taken under. So those Neptune transits can last a very long time. Okay, here we go. We're now at 11 degrees on the ascendant in Libra. So we started the show off at 3? So we've got 8 degrees on the ascendant. Moving along, the hour is passing us by, degree by degree by degree. How about that? So yeah, the outer planet transits. Hey, I'm telling you right now, if you are involved in a Neptunian transit on one of your planets, this is the key strategy: surrender and let go. Surrender and let go. Surrender and let go. Forgive. Surrender. Let go. Forgive. That's it. Not much you can do with a Neptune transit. Surrender, let go, forgive. That's a conjunction, okay, generally speaking. And you can achieve a sense of grace with a Neptune transit. I think that the hardest thing to do with a transit is to be stuck in ego. If you're stuck in ego with a Neptune transit, you get the downside of Neptune. The upside of Neptune is forgiveness, grace. It's not a bad place to be. The downside, you get to deal with ego and you get to go to hell. But that's the downside of a Neptune transit. I mean, seriously, you'll be in hell, okay? So you may as well surrender, let go, forgive, and try to catch that wave of grace. The Pluto transit, there's not much you can do. But again, there's a letting go part. With Neptune, you're trying to, I don't know, move around in the tide, trying to get your footing and stuff. And if I can just get to the shore, I can get there. I can do this, that's but Pluto, you don't have that at all. Pluto, it's almost like there's no choice in Pluto. Neptune kind of gives you the illusion of choice. Always the best choice with Neptune is to surrender and let it go. But it gives you the illusion of choice. Pluto, there is no choice. There's you're into it. It's intense. It'll change you, transform you. And then Uranus, of course, you can play around. Saturn, it's a whole different creature. Right now, we are just coming out of a Saturn Moon opposition. We've had Saturn Moon for the last, starting this afternoon, as the moon has moved into 6 degrees now. So earlier today, we had the Saturn Moon opposition early this evening. And, these are temporary transits. But for a few hours, with a Saturn Moon opposition, you can be homesick. You can, if you're out traveling or you're in a city or a place that seems foreign to you, or you're even just missing another time in your life, that could come up, especially when the moon is in Cancer, that can come up with a Saturn Moon opposition. You can become nostalgic, and even to some degree a bit removed from your emotions. On the other end of the spectrum, the Saturn opposition to the moon. So that's temporary, but that's happening right now. The moon is up in the 9th house still, and the ascendant is moving. Now it's at 13 degrees. and the midheaven's at 13, the ascendant's at 12. So the moon is moving further and further away at this point from the midheaven. So as the show goes on, the moon, because of the advance of the midheaven, will wind up going deeper and deeper and deeper. And if we were here, 2 hours from now, the moon would be in the 8th house versus the 9th house. All right, let's just look at where the big planets are. So Jupiter is in Scorpio. It'll be there until it reaches 23 degrees, and then it will go retrograde all the way to 13. And then once it hits 13, it will station, and then it will move forward, and it'll wind up leaving Scorpio in November, late November. So, we're going to have Jupiter and Scorpio, throughout the summer. And boy, what a Jupiter and Scorpio time it's been, huh? The latest being the dark revelations of the gymnastics world. Wow. Now, I had a really interesting conversation tonight with Emily Moyer. We're going to do a pre-record on tomorrow night, and I'm going to air that on the Tuesday show. And Emily was a competitive gymnast, so she's very close to the gymnastics world, and she knows, who the big players are. And she has a very interesting take on all of this. And when I talked with her, she had just gotten back from vacation, but I could tell that this whole gymnastics thing had kind of wigged her out, because Emily talks a little bit rapid, wouldn't you say? Well, she was talking even faster today. So I think that there's something going on in terms of this stuff, but she's got an interesting take on this, and we're going to talk about that on Tuesday. So if you have any interest in this whole strange, bizarre event at Michigan State with Larry Nassar and the gymnasts, tune in. We will talk about Me Too. That's going to be part of the discussion. So if you have the temerity, or you have the stomach to listen to it, you should tune in. I've lost people when I've talked about Me Too. I've tried to do my best to be fair and balanced, but some of my perspectives have not gone over well with a few people, so I've lost some clients / students. I also had an interview today with Shauna Home. If you know who Shauna is, check her out. She's a fantastic author and shaman and counselor, and so we talked today. She's got about 3 books out, and we talked about a lot of stuff. We got into the Me Too material as well. Thank God I wasn't alone. I wasn't on an island. And there's, again, some interesting conversation. So this Jupiter and Scorpio just keeps giving and giving and giving, doesn't it? Expanding into the darkness, expanding into the lurid crevices of sexuality. And wouldn't it be nice if we had a more, I always say this, maybe this will happen after the retrograde. I'm really hoping that once Jupiter goes past the retrograde, goes direct again, and I really hope that we have a different relationship with sex on a collective level, because right now it's just, we're getting it, right? We're getting that big, expansive kind of dark revelation with Jupiter and Scorpio. Right now, tonight, it's in the 2nd house of the chart of the moment. Jupiter is actually in sextile with Mercury, and it's a pretty good sextile. Mercury's at 26, Jupiter's at 20, so 6 degrees. We'll count it, and so I guess we can talk freely about Jupiterian and Scorpionic aspects tonight without too much reprisal, although it is squaring Venus right now. Venus is at 14, Aquarius. So we got a Sun-Venus conjunction happening. Of course, we talked about that at the beginning of the show. We have an inconjunct going on right now with the Sun and the Moon, and that'll be happening up and through the hours of the morning. I wonder what it'd be like to give birth on a Sun-Moon inconjunct. That'd be a really interesting astrological thing to check out. I wonder if you'd have complications if you were giving birth on a Sun-Moon inconjunct. That'd be an interesting thing to try to figure out. Pre-eclipse, balsamic moon. Here we go. Right? No, balsamic moon. We already went through that. No, it's a pre-eclipse moon. It's a pre-full moon. So we might even. It's not quite in full moon phase. It's not quite in full moon phase. So this would be what waxing gibbous. I think we're in waxing gibbous now. So yeah, Sun Venus conjunction, relationships. The Sun is going to catch up to Venus here pretty darn soon, and so we're going to have more and more action and traction with the Sun Venus conjunction, and that's actually a good thing. I mean, this is a time where I think there can actually be some nice healing in relationships with the Sun Venus conjunction in Aquarius, because people don't take things so personally. They don't take things so personally. Now, when the full moon kicks in, when that super full blood moon kicks in, that may be a little bit different. But I think that there's some real potential for kind of getting above the situation in our relationships with that Sun Venus conjunction in Aquarius. And Darren Williams has been on my show a few times, was texting me the other night. It was very late. It was very, very late for him. He lives in Liverpool. I think for him it's about 2:30 in the morning. And anytime somebody is sending you wild texts at 2:30 in the morning, it's a pretty good chance something's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a little bit of celebrating happening. Anyway, he was telling me his take on this full moon coming up. And this was his take. This full moon is going to have the energy of somebody wanting to fuck you and kill you simultaneously. I'm like, okay, man, let me think about that. Leo, powerful, fixed, intense, eclipse, blood, blue. Well, maybe. You know? Maybe if you tap into that stream of consciousness, it just might. Yeah, it's going to be, bottom line, it's going to be a very close full moon. It's the second one this month. I remember. I never forget. Okay, I'll tell you a personal story about the blue moon. This is the blue moon. This is the exact blue moon that we're talking about. Although this blue moon happened in 1999. And it was February of 1999. And it was Super Bowl Sunday. And the Super Bowl was between the Denver Broncos and the Atlanta Falcons. And there was a player for the Atlanta Falcons named Eugene Robinson. And Eugene Robinson was the NFL's Man of the Year. The Man of the Year. How about that? That means that he was noted for his great service to the NFL. Anyway, the night before the Super Bowl, Eugene Robinson is out in Atlanta. He's a religious guy, right? He goes to his church and he preached. Eugene Robinson winds up getting picked up by an off-duty cop for a solicitation. So I'll look him up here. Was a lady of the night. She wasn't. So he got busted before the Super Bowl. Now, this was just on a moon. They marched. No, it's not him. Eugene Robinson. Let's see. Football player. Eugene Robinson. Oh, he's an American. Is he a columnist now? What? No, that's not him. Eugene Robinson, football player. It can't be him. Let's see. Yeah, that's him. May 28th. May 28th. So Mr. Robinson, how do you do? Mr. Robinson was a Gemini. Yep, that's right. Man of the Year. NFL Man of the Year. Getting busted for cruising for the ladies of the night. He was useless. He played the next day. He had to go to jail. He got bailed out. Huge story. Massive shame. He did not have a good Super Bowl, and neither did the Atlanta Falcons. They lost. Anyway, so that night of the second full moon in February, the blue moon, I went to a place called Harbin Hot Springs. Harbin Hot Springs. Some of you may know about it. They burned to the ground. Kind of a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of event, actually. It's just outside of Clear Lake in Northern California. And it was one of these places where you could go there and do yoga and have great macrobiotic food and vegetarian food. And then it kind of slipped into, then they had these hot springs, these incredible hot springs. And then it slipped into the kind of slimy world of polyamory. Now, I'm not judging the polyamory community, but let's just say that it was a community where they really just wanted to have sex. And then they kind of dressed it up with a lot of, new age window dressing. And a lot of people have gotten hurt from my experience watching the damage in the polyamory community or the poly community. A lot of people have gotten hurt. So I'm not a huge fan, although people can do whatever they want with their lives. Anyway, so I went to Harbin Hot Springs because I was there interviewing this guy named what was his name? Hey, calm down over there. Calm down over there. Sorry, my animals must be this moon. They're feeling the moon already. Anyway, I was there to interview Bhagwan Das. And Bhagwan Das was part of the Das community, Krishna Das, Babahari Das, Ram Das, all those Dases. And he was the first. He was one of the first of the Dases. He was a young dude, decided to go to India, and he did. And he was one of the first Americans to get over there and get on the spiritual train. And then Ram Dass met up with him, and he introduced Ram Dass to Neem Karoli Baba, who became Ram Dass's teacher. Of course, Ram Dass writes Be Here Now, in which Bhagavan Das plays a role in the book. So when the book is published in the U.S., he winds up becoming a celebrity back in the United States, a spiritual celebrity. Anyway, I read his book called I'm Here Now, and it's a really, really honest book. It's an honest book. And so I went up there, and it was his real name is Michael Riggs. Michael Riggs. Anyway, I went to go see Bhagavan, and what I saw was really, it was kind of difficult for me to watch in some ways, because I was there to write a story on him, and what I saw was not entirely flattering, to be honest with you. Okay. And I also saw somebody who was incredibly vulnerable and very open with me. So I wrote a story that was, at the time, I wish I'd written a different kind of story. And I'm being honest, a different kind of story, because it was a little snarky and it was a little cynical in some ways. And it was basically for the readership of this magazine. It was an online magazine I was writing for. And it was, let's just say it was an interesting night. It was a very, very interesting night. So I was there on this moon, right? This second full moon, the blue moon. This is where I meet this guy. And there were also some other personal effects that took place. I eventually wound up having a connection with this woman that he was seeing. That was later on, a few weeks after that. It was a very unusual 48 hours, let's put it that way. So that was this upcoming blue moon for me back in 1999. I mean, I thought it was a positive experience. It was just for me. So let's see what else we have here. What else is going on? Mars has just gone into Sagittarius. Man, I can feel it. I have Mars in my 12th house. Now it's on my ascendant. I can feel it for sure. It's like, I wish I had Mars on my ascendant natally. What a great place for Mars. Whenever you have a Mars transit on your ascendant, you've got a Mars transit on your ascendant. You feel good. It's like, yeah, I feel good. I can take on the world. Love Mars on the ascendant. It's great. You get a lot done. If you have Mars, if you happen to be a Sagittarius rising, get ready. You're going to have Mars on your ascendant, or maybe it's already been on your ascendant, but you will have it on your ascendant. Well, if you're zero Sag, you will. But it's getting there. Take advantage of it. Get a lot of stuff done. Get a lot of stuff done. Try out to stay out of confrontations with people. Get stuff done. Okay. Let's see, we've got Mercury. And where's good old Mercury? Good old Mercury. Mars is sextile Mercury. That's clear. That's lucid. I like Mars Mercury sextiles. Again, a lot of mental work. Get a lot of good things done. Mercury is in Capricorn. It's at the end of Capricorn, 26 degrees. So it's getting ready to go into Aquarius. And then we have our friend Pluto, about 7 degrees off. So Pluto, let's see, the next planet's going to hit Pluto. That's going to be what? It's going to be Mars. And when's that going to happen? April Fool's Day. No, I take that back. That's Mars-Saturn. Mars-Saturn. That's a Mars-Saturn conjunction on April Fool's Day. The Mars-Pluto conjunction happens after that. That's going to be an interesting time. The 1st of April onwards, man, with that Mars-Saturn conjunction and the Mars conjunction, look out. Springtime in America is going to be very, very intense. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some level of violence during that time. What else do we have here? We got the Saturn-Moon opposition. And let's see, Uranus is in Aries in the 7th house. Uranus is still in that, it's still in that out of sign trine with Saturn for now. And Saturn will be moving forward, so it's going to get, I think, further away from that trine. Here we go. Let's see, 16 degrees Libra rising. And that's about it. We've got a nice moon trine to Neptune starting in the morning. So it's already in trine, but in the morning, so that's actually a pretty good. That's a pretty good emotional vibration to start the week on with a moon Neptune trine. It's pretty soft, pretty compassionate, and the moon is moving further out of that opposition with Saturn. So that's actually pretty good. Be kind, be gentle to yourself. You know what you should do tomorrow? Have yourself a nice, fresh juice in the morning with that moon Neptune trine. Speaking of morning, apparently California is going to start to label coffee as a substance that can produce cancer. What is up with California, man? Now they want to ban plastic straws in California. I kind of get it, whatever. I kind of get it. But typical California fashion, apparently, if now there's this legislation that this genius has put in to play in California, that if you bring somebody, your waiter, you bring somebody a plastic straw and they don't ask for it, you can be arrested. I mean, what is up with California? Coffee is cancerous, and straws will put you in jail. Remember the paper straws? Where did those go? Those paper straws, you probably get, I don't know, what about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and all of a sudden the ends would get really mushy. And it was a good idea. Maybe they'll bring back the paper straw. All right. I wanted to get into some charts tonight. They're easy to find. So find them. You can go into Astrodienst. They're easy to find. So I was at Barnes and Noble yesterday, and I picked up a copy of Love Sign by Linda Goodman. And boy, I started to read it, and I forgot just how amazing Linda Goodman was as an astrologer. If you've not read Linda Goodman, or you do not know who Linda Goodman is, Linda Goodman, I think more than just about anybody, was the person that launched astrology big time in the 20th century. I know Sidney Omar, people are always talking about Sidney Omar and, one of the great, astrological columnists. Jean Dixon was kind of an astrologer, but it's really Linda Goodman. Her book, Sun Signs, was the first astrology book to appear on the New York Times bestseller list. And the follow-up to that, which was Love Signs, I think she got a $2.8 million advance for Love Signs. How about that? That was back in the day. She was incredibly successful as an astrologer. And there's a reason for that. She was quite good at it. You go back and you read sun signs, you read love signs, and it's pretty remarkable, pretty amazing. So I got her chart up here. You can go to Astrodienst. She's born April 9th, 1925. And Linda Goodman was not her real name. She took up the name Linda when she was doing radio during the war. That was World War II. She was born in 1925. So her name was Linda, and she read love letters over the airwaves to GIs. And then after each love letter, she would play a song that would be reflective of that love letter. So we see this love theme play a pretty significant role in her life. Of course, love signs, and like I said, was a really, really big hit, and really good book on relationships. So we have Linda as the DJ, and then she married a guy with the last name of Goodman, so hence she became Linda Goodman. I think she was married twice, and she had 2 sets of kids from 2 sets of husbands. Now, she is an Aries, and she's an Aries rising, Sun in Aries, Venus in Aries, and she has Mercury retrograde in Taurus. And her Mercury is hardly aspected at all. Now, people apparently who have unaspected Mercury, and this is something I was just looking into, because I've had my own sort of theories about unaspected Mercury, but apparently people that have unaspected Mercury or very low aspect to Mercury tend to be really bright, really, really bright, because if they rely on their mind all the time, they can't rely on other people or other aspects in their life, so they wind up focusing. Right now, she doesn't have an unaspected Mercury, but it's not highly aspected. She's got a Mercury opposite the moon in her chart, and she has a Mercury conjunction with what is that? Is it Chiron? No, it can't be Chiron. I guess so. I guess she has Chiron in Aries. I didn't see it on the chart here, but again, that's not a major aspect. And then she's got a trine from Mercury to the midheaven. But the only real aspect she has with Mercury is that opposition to the moon. So Linda Goodman was born on a full moon, and now her most popular book really was, Sun Signs was really, really popular. The Love Signs was, I'm not sure if it hit the bestseller list or topped Sun Signs, but she certainly got a lot of money out of it, and that's a pretty great book about relationships, like Libra man, Aries woman, Sagittarius man. It goes through all these permutations, and she really gets into granularity. I mean, she took a long time to read this book. Now, look where she has Saturn and Moon. She has Saturn and Moon in her 7th house, which favors, to some degree, relationship, right? Saturn is exalted in Libra, and Saturn in the 7th house is accidental exaltation. So she would do well with relationships. She would do well with the concept of relationship. And sure enough, she's got a Saturn-Pluto trine. Now, her Pluto is in a very interesting place. So I'm going to get into her Pluto in a minute, because there's an interesting story about her Pluto and one of her children, which, of course, would be the 4th house and the 5th house. She did well. She did well with the relationship material. We have the ability to be individual and kind of a trailblazer. And again, Sun on the ascendant she's a double Aries, right? That's what she is, double Aries. It's a powerful person, really, really powerful person. And I think if you look at the square to Jupiter in her chart, by the way, Sun-Jupiter squares are not terrible. They're not terrible. Any square to Jupiter is not terrible, in my estimation, to be honest with you. Maybe the worst would be a Neptune-Jupiter square. But what Jupiter does is it forces a person to open up and expand to their opportunities with Jupiter on the midheaven, or Jupiter, in this case, in the 10th house. So her personal drive, her personal, okay, so let's do this. Let's do a little astrological map. Okay, what is the 5th house? The 5th house are things that we love, right? Things that we love. It's our passion. It's our pastime. And for Linda Goodman, she loves love. She's got her true node in the 5th house in Leo. She loves love. She could be, quite honestly, an expert on love. Now, she didn't call her book relation, it's in relationship. She called her book Love Signs, right? I mean, that's like true node in the fifth house. And then there's a Neptune there in the fifth house. And Neptune can be very creative in the fifth house, can be very, very creative. But unless there are some planets that are connected to Neptune, sometimes it can just be creative and nothing ever comes of it. So what we see here in her chart is we see a lot going on with Neptune. There's a trine from Neptune to the sun, okay? Neptune to the sun, which means that Neptunian energy, that creative energy, which is spiritual by and large with Neptune, goes over to the ascendant and moves into her ascendant and moves into her sun. So now she can embody this creative energy. She is the embodiment of the creative energy because she's her sun on the ascendant. She's on the ascendant, right? The ascendant's on, her ascendant is, her sun's conjunct the ascendant. So this creative energy is flowing over to the sun. Right over, right? She's got it. No, what is she going to do with it? What is she going to do with it? Well, maybe she should take it up to the 10th house. Jupiter does represent publishing now, doesn't it? Rules Sagittarius. So it does have an imprint publishing. So with a little bit more effort, she can take that Indian energy, embody it, and then with a little bit of struggle, maybe her friends, maybe some people that are professional acquaintances, whoever, they say, do the heavy lifting, write the book, get it done, bring it to the world. There's Jupiter. Now, there are other things happening with Neptune. There's the inconjunct with Jupiter. So I know this. Now, there's more to this Neptune inconjunct story, which I'm going to tell you about. I know this thing. I know I can do it. How do I do it? How do I get from my fifth house, my creativity, the things that I love, to actually bringing it up to the world? Well, she had an alternate path. She went to the sun. And then from the sun and embodying it, living it, breathing it, being it, she then brought it up from the ascendant and the sun to the midheaven and to Jupiter, where she was very successful, right? Neptune is also squaring off against Saturn, which I see here that potentially how she felt about love did not always match up with how she experienced relationship with that Saturn square to Neptune, that sometimes there can be a real crash, a real reality crash. But in the right relationship, she would be very committed and all the way through to the end with that Saturn-Pluto trine. So she's complex. She's a pretty complex person, to be honest with you. What kind of chart is this? This is almost as a classic tripod in some ways. Almost, but not quite. It's very close. It's not a splay. It is, let's see, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, there's 4, 5. There's 5 houses without planets, so it's not a splash chart. I guess we could call this a modified tripod. Now, here's what's interesting about, look, the other thing, Uranus in the 12th house. Uranus rules astrology. What's it doing? Sextiling Jupiter. How about that? Okay, so here's the weird thing about Linda Goodman. I think it was in the 1970s. Her daughter disappeared. She had a teenage daughter that disappeared, and she and the police were never able to recover the body. And she was convinced, absolutely convinced, that her daughter was still alive. And she spent the rest of her life spending money and time trying to find her daughter. In fact, she passed away without ever finding her daughter. And they never found a body. They were never able to close the case because they never found the body. So I guess officially she was deceased. I mean, that's what the case reads, but they never actually found her daughter. So where would we see this in the chart? Can we see this somewhere in the chart? Well, I think we have this intense Pluto right here, right down at the bottom of the chart. She's the mother. Remember, Pluto has to do with obsession and intensity. And again, there's that transformational part with Pluto. But that's right there. It's right on the cusp of the fourth house, which is the home and mother. So there's this Plutonian intensity and perhaps even a death in the household. I'm not saying her daughter died in the household, but she was on a Plutonian quest as a mother to find her daughter, right? Find her daughter. And so, what can we, what can we see square, right? There's a square to the sun. Very intense, man. Those Pluto sun squares, they're intense in people. They are very intense. If you ever deal with somebody who's got a Pluto sun square in their chart, that's a person who's got some volcanic intensity and perhaps volcanic anger. Okay, Pluto sun squares. They're not tame or gentle. Okay, let's put it that way. And yet, people can go through their entire life without being, a sociopath or a murderer or anything that a Pluto sun square might actually entail. But they could go through an event that's very Plutonian, and they could lose somebody with a Pluto sun square. So in this case, it's the daughter Neptune in the fifth house with children, right? Children, that's the fifth house. So what is Neptune doing there? Well, it's in Leo. Of course, we got the square to Saturn. And then there's that inconjunct again to Neptune at the top of the chart. What would that indicate? And even the inconjunct with like the moon to Uranus, moon being the mother, there are some very strange inconjuncts inside the chart. And I believe it's these inconjuncts that are the broken path that Linda Goodman followed to find her daughter over the course of her lifetime until she passed away, sadly, without ever finding her daughter. Linda Goodman's cottage, if you're interested, is still around, the home that she lived in. And it's been turned into a bed and breakfast. It's in Colorado. And apparently she has quite an interesting array of stained glass windows that she put in. That I think has to do with the zodiac and astrology and sun signs and all kinds of esoterica. She wasn't just an astrologer. She was into symbolism. And there's a book called Goobers that she wrote. A very interesting book. Apparently it's written in kind of an esoteric code. To me, that's real Uranus and the 12th house stuff. Anyway, very interesting person. One of the, I think, great astrologers and one of the most underrated. People always talk about, Stephen Forrest, Liz Green, Robert Hands, Alan Okin. Nobody ever talks about Linda Goodman in the same breath. I'll put her right up there with the rest of those people. All right. Let's see, what else do we have? This was kind of let's see if I can find this one. Should I do it? Let's see. No, I'm going to skip this one because we're already in an hour and a half. I was going to look at Tom Selleck's chart. It's Tom Selleck's birthday tomorrow. It's an interesting chart. You should look it up. One of the things that has kind of dogged Tom Selleck is that he's actually gay, right? And I was trying to find that in his chart. And he's got an interesting thing going on with Mars in the 12th house. Let me get into. So I want to get into this whole thing, kind of wrapping up the show here, and I'll get back into the chat room and we'll answer some questions, or whatever. So I was looking at this pre-eclipse. So you can go into Astrodienst, and when you go to the bottom, the very bottom, you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see where there is a kind of a scroll for the asteroids and some stars and Black Moon Lilith and Part of Fortune, Vertex. And if you scroll down, you'll actually see pre-eclipse, post-eclipse, solar, pre-eclipse, post-eclipse, lunar. Okay. So I decided to check it out. And I mean, I've already done this before, so I know it, but I wanted to see where this is a couple months ago. I wanted to see where the eclipse was before I was born. And I knew that I was basically born on an eclipse, but I wanted to know how close pre-eclipse, right? So in my chart, the eclipse happened at 27 degrees Virgo, and my sun is at 29 degrees Virgo. So essentially, I was born 1 day per degree. I was born 2 days after the eclipse, so the pre-eclipse is at 27 Virgo. So it is conjunct my sun. I was born on a solar eclipse. So you can go in and you can find out where the pre-eclipse takes place in your chart. And where it takes place in your chart is an area where theoretically there's a few different definitions. Some people say, well, that's an area of struggle and challenge. I've also heard that it can be an area in your chart where you actually may have some leadership skills, some latent leadership. Because remember, the sun is your guiding light in this lifetime. It's life force, it's power, right? It's soul. So the pre-eclipse is this hidden area inside of your chart where you can contain this potential, this solar potential. Okay, so if you do that, you can figure out where that pre-eclipse is, what house it's in, what it might be doing with other planets in your chart. So it's kind of an interesting, another take on your identity in some ways. It's another sliver in how you can begin to look at yourself with the pre-eclipse moment, pre-solar eclipse. There's also the pre-lunar eclipse. Now, while the pre-solar eclipse talks about the ability to channel some form of energy, some form of light, some form of will, to some degree, some leadership in quotes. The lunar eclipse, pre-lunar eclipse is different. And the pre-lunar eclipse is where you're really sensitive, where your highest degree of sensitivity is. So you can do the same thing. You can drop down on that little portion inside of AstroDienst, and you can get a sense as to where it lines up. And now this, I've been playing with my pre-solar eclipse for a while. This I hadn't really delved into. To be honest with you. So I did it before tonight's show because I wanted to talk about this. And I've got my pre-lunar eclipse at 12 Pisces in my chart. And right now, Neptune is on my pre-lunar eclipse in my 4th house. Yeah, that's right. We're talking sensitivity, home life, okay? So this was a revelation for me. So now you can, when you line up your pre-eclipse and you have planets going over your pre-eclipse and you, again, are going through something in your life, all of a sudden it's like, wow, I get it. I get it. I can see why this is taking place. So this is another thing for you to look at and kind of get some inside baseball on your chart. Pre-eclipse, solar pre-eclipse, and then lunar pre-eclipse. And then you have the post-lunar and the post-solar. So those are the next eclipses that take place. But I'm really more interested in the pre-eclipses. To me, those are fascinating. And when I found out about my sun, it was like, okay, yeah, there it is. So now I can even play with the Sabian symbol of my pre-eclipse sun, which is going to be 28 degrees. And you can do that too. You can look at your Sabian symbol for your pre-eclipse or your pre-lunar eclipse. Anyway, it's just something to play with and get another insight into your chart, as it were. All right, let me check back in with you people in the chat room. Let's have some interactivity. Now we got 38 people there. Here's Christine. Hi, Christine. Hi, Jean. How important is locational astrology? Can we ever get it right? We can't avoid or we have to move, etc. How do we make the most of the intensity? Okay, I think locational astrology is really important. My hair looks funny tonight, by the way. I don't like this hairdo. I'm having a moment of vanity. I'm sorry. I think locational astrology, can you ever get it right? It's not perfect. It's not perfect because you're going to have to do the entire relocated chart. But I'll tell you right now that if you live on your sun line on the ascendant, you'll feel it, you'll know it. You'll feel it and you will know it with the sunlight on the ascendant. If you live with Saturn on your ascendant, trust me, you'll feel it, you'll know it. And yeah, what do we have here? Just read a good book on astrology. Help by Noah Eastwood. It's quite a few examples. Good. Hey, Jerry, come help me. Come help me sometime on Facebook. I want to get insured. I can't do them anymore. I think you might be the answer. Jerry might be the answer. By the way, if you've not caught Jerry's show, he's in the chat room tonight. And you got to catch Nox Mente. This is a show that Jerry and Nish do. I was on it, and Steve Cremmy was on it. So he does it. I'm not sure how often they do it, but catch Nox Mente. You can find Jerry. He's a Facebook friend, and he's in the chat room tonight. At least I hope he still is. Hi, there's Jan. You like my hair? I do need a trim, Jan. I do. I'm looking a little scraggly tonight. Sally said she looked at my relocated chart for Corfu in Greece and explains why I love it there. Sun on ascendant. I'm telling you, just find that sun line. Just find that sun line. That's all you got to do. Kathy's got an interesting comment. She says, yeah, but Cali mandates vaccines and sprays chemtrails all the time. Right, coffee causes cancer. Exactly. What else do we have here in the chat room? So there's Daniel. Yeah, Daniel, I did a show with Jerry, and he's done a bunch of really good shows. Very interesting stuff. He and Nish create a really interesting space, and people just unwind. There's Sue's smelling, feeling, experiencing love. Second mention for Nox Mente. Yeah, Nox Mente has it going on. All right, what else do we have? What do we have here? There's Sally again. There's Anna. Hi, Anna. She must have left already. Let me see here. Yeah, glitchy. You know, I don't know what to say about the glitchy part. I'm sorry. I'm not. Unless I go direct into my modem. But you know what'll happen? Tomorrow it'll show up and it'll be just fine. I smell love. So I got a Pluto transit since 2008. Soon Uranus is going into my first house. I like Uranus' first house. Have fun with it. In Pluto first house, by the way, when Pluto went into my first house, I dug it. I have to say. I have to dug it. There's Primetime Cuber. Give me a shout out. Hi, Primetime Cuber. Shout out to Primetime Cuber. I'm not a goat. I'm a sheep. There's Brian. Hi, Brian. Firmament bust. I like that. I'm just checking in with you chatters. What else we got here? Now, I like Pluto in my first house because I'd had Pluto transit my 12th house for a long time. And I was ready for it to leave my 12th house. I got into too much trouble with Pluto in my 12th house. Joe says, per human design as a manifester, I'm informing y'all that for this lunar eclipse, I intend to manifest the PB lottery jackpot. We'll finally pay off that dang student loan. Okay, Joe, we hear you loud and clear. So we are, yeah, my hair is totally feathered. It's weird, huh? I know. So Joe, we are your witnesses for your proclamation. So you're going to share it with us when you win? Is that going to happen? Yeah, if you're into locational astrology, get on that sun line on the ascendant. Really, no matter what's going on with the rest of your chart, you can't go wrong. Yes, of course. Tom Selleck is gay. That's I know it's one of the rumors. It's a rumor that he's gay. Maybe not totally gay, but gay enough. You know what I mean? Anyway, I was just you can look it up, and it's not like it's a big deal. I just saw his chart and I thought, could we, if that's true, can we find it? Well, he's got Mars in his 12th house, so it's hidden away. So I'm not making any judgments on Tom Selleck's preference. It's none of my business. Okay, I think we've just about wrapped it up. Hey, listen, I need some more charts to do charts for people, and on the show tonight. Not tonight. Yeah, he's married with a daughter. Well, it's true. I know he's married with. It's true. I'm not saying he is. I'm telling you, there's been rumors. That's all. And I was just going to look at his chart to see if we can find it, but I can't find his chart, so it's not that big of a deal. It's probably better to speak highly of Linda Goodman. That's what I'm talking about. I'm telling you, check out sun signs and love signs, especially if you have any interest in the relationship of astrology, or the astrology of relationship. Oh my God. It's a winner, man. Knocked it out of the park. All right. So send me your birth dates and times, and we'll start doing some readings for y'all starting next week. Send them to rpm1122 at zoho.com. How do you figure out the location of your sun line on your ascendant? Well, okay. So AstroDeist has a really great tool. It's called Astro Travel Click. I think that's what they call it. I'll tell you what they call it. I don't even have to think about it. I'll tell you what they call it. Give me a second. So if you go to their website and you go to free horoscopes, there's a drop down called Astro Click Travel. You click on that, your chart will already be loaded in there, and you'll get to see the entire world. And you get to see where lines are crossing across your chart. It's based on cardinal points. What's on the ascendant, descendant, immancella, midheaven, and then there are crossing lines. So the crossing lines are a little bit different. I mean, there are lines that are going this way as well as your. So what happens? So the program relocates your chart across the planet, and what it does is it notes what planets are on the cardinal points. So you want to look on there, you want to see sun on the ascendant. You go, oh, okay. Well, for me, my sun is on the ascendant in the East Coast of the United States, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Virginia, goes down through Miami. So what I would do then is I would do a relocation. You can do that through AstroDeist as well. You want to relocate your chart, so you change your place of reference. You go in, you change your place of reference to where you want to theoretically live. You plug it in, and then you cast a relocation chart for your new place of reference. You get a chart based on that. And that's when you can see, like, not just your sun line, but where all the other planets line up. In location, astrology, relocation is vital. It is vital. It's like the 1A and the 1B of one's astrological experience. All right, so send me your birth time and date and place. It's RPM 1122 at zoho.com. Next Monday, maybe I'll do 2 next week. Maybe we'll do 2 a week. We get back on that track. Next Sunday. And next Sunday, we're going to do this at 8 o'clock Central Time. 8 o'clock Central Time. So for you people in California, right after you eat dinner, plug in, tune in, turn on. And for you folks back in the East Coast, be a little bit earlier, 9 o'clock. How about that? Not too bad. So we'll be done and out of here by about 9:30. Everybody get a good night's sleep and get up and face the day on Monday. All right, new time on Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Now the football season's over. 8 p.m. on Sunday nights for the live stream. I want to thank everybody in the chat room. So the website, go to astrodeist.com, or just astro.com. Yep. Okay. Thank you for showing up and being in the chat room. And you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open to what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix saying good night to you from Austin, Texas. I hope you all have wonderful, visionary, lucid dreams. I'll see you tomorrow on the 15 Minutes of Flame. Sayonara.